She called it an accident. It just happened, it wasn't planned. That's what she told me when I caught her. So I treated it like a crime scene. Not the kind with blood and bullets. Something worse. Something personal. I didn't scream, didn't curse. I just started collecting evidence. Calmly, like an investigator. Like a man with a job to do. Because if it just happened, then surely she wouldn't mind me taking a closer look. Her name is Haley Brooks, 29. Gorgeous, polished, always ready with a smile and a clever line. The kind of woman who knew how to work a room. And work the truth. We'd been together for almost 3 years. Built a quiet, strong life together. Or so I thought. But then came the late-night texts. The vague girls' nights out that didn't check out. And the worst one. Her returning home one night smelling like a man's cologne. Not mine, not anyone we knew. That's when I felt it. That slow, sharp click in my chest. Like a lock turning. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I just started doing what I do best. Organizing facts. See, I'm not built for chaos. I'm not the guy who flips tables or punches walls. I'm the guy who creates order. I manage risk. I track details. I keep receipts. Not for drama, but for clarity. And Haley? She'd made the mistake of thinking I was soft because I stayed silent. But silence is where I sharpen my knives. It took 3 weeks to put the whole puzzle together. Phone records, Uber history, hotel check-ins under fake names, screenshots of messages where she called him baby and told him she missed his hands. All of it time-stamped, all of it backed up in a zip folder labeled "Accidents don't look like this." Then came the night of her confession. She stood in our kitchen, makeup perfect, tone measured, and said, "It wasn't what you think. It wasn't planned. It just happened." And I nodded, smiled, told her I understood. But she didn't notice the USB drive sitting on the counter behind me. She didn't see the message I'd just queued up to send. The group chat, her friends, my friends, a few co-workers, even her parents. They all got the same message. "Hey everyone, just clearing up a misunderstanding. Haley said this wasn't planned, that it just happened. So I put together a timeline. Figured you all deserved the truth, folder attached." I didn't write another word, just facts. Photos of her in bed, time-stamped. Screenshots of flirty texts while I was at work. A receipt from a hotel where she said she was out with the girls. Her selfie taken in his bathroom, clear as daylight. That was the night her world cracked. Haley didn't react right away. She read the message, maybe twice. Then slowly turned her phone over on the kitchen counter like hiding it could undo what she saw. Her fingers trembled just slightly and her lips parted, as if she might say something clever, something that might soften the blow. But nothing came out. I poured myself a glass of water, took a sip, let her marinate in the silence. That was the part she never understood. How much louder silence can be than words. "It wasn't like that," she finally muttered. "I didn't mean for it to go so far." Of course she didn't. They never do. But here's what she didn't know. By the time she said those words, I had already known everything for weeks. Her confession wasn't a surprise. It was a formality. She thought she was giving me something new. In reality, she was walking straight into a trap that had already been set. The first time I got suspicious was the way she started locking her phone. Not just the usual password, but Face ID turned off, notifications hidden. She used to leave her phone anywhere. Now it might as well have been surgically attached to her. I noticed. Quietly. So I started paying attention. I watched how long it took her to get home when she said she was just grabbing groceries. I noted her girls' night out photos, always from the same spot in the bar, like she'd taken them in one batch just to post over time. I watched the gaps between when she read my messages and when she replied, and then I started digging. I wasn't hacking into her accounts or following her around. I didn't need to. All I had to do was stay patient. A photo of her in a hotel mirror, posted to her close friend's Instagram story, slipped through the cracks. One of her friends, who didn't like her as much as she thought, forwarded it to me. From there, it all unraveled. The guy's name was Dylan, sales rep, cocky, younger than me by a few years, and the kind of guy who thought designer sneakers made up for having nothing to say. I found his name in her phone under a fake contact. Erica. The chat logs were damning. She didn't just cheat, she built an alternate life. She told him she was stuck in something boring, said I was too quiet, that I didn't get her anymore. She even mocked the way I folded laundry. That part made me laugh, not because it was funny, but because it was so petty, so stupid. By the time I finished the timeline, I had collected hotel receipts, screenshots of explicit messages, even a copy of a calendar reminder she set for their anniversary. Not ours. Theirs. She had been celebrating an affair. So when she stood in front of me now, eyes glossy, voice soft, trying to shrink the fire she'd lit into a candle flicker, I just listened. That's what made it worse for her. I didn't argue. I didn't accuse. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said, as if that made any difference. "You didn't mean to get caught," I replied. "Let's not confuse the two." Her eyes filled with tears, but they weren't the kind that came from regret. They were tears of consequence, of image collapse. Haley was the kind of person who feared public shame more than private guilt, and I had just lit her stage on fire. "You didn't have to send that to everyone," she whispered, almost pleading now. I smiled. Not cruelly, just... "Finally." "You're right," I said. "I didn't have to, but you made sure I could," and with that I picked up my keys and walked out the door, leaving her standing in the ruins of her own fiction. The message went out at 7:36 p.m. One group chat, 15 people, every mutual friend we had, plus 2 of her coworkers I knew would spread it like wildfire. The message was simple. She said it just happened. Here's the timeline. "Accidents don't come with hotel receipts and backup plans. Thought you should all see it for yourselves." Attached was a single zip folder. Inside were 6 neatly labeled files. No ranting, no name-calling, just data. Photos, screenshots, timestamps, GPS records, her own words captured in text threads. One folder even included a side-by-side of her telling me she was stuck late at work while she was literally texting him from a rooftop bar. I didn't need to tell a story. The evidence spoke louder than I ever could. I didn't wait around to watch the replies. I muted the chat, closed the laptop, and poured myself a drink. Not out of celebration, out of closure. Within the hour, the fallout had begun. Haley called me 12 times in the first 20 minutes. Then came the texts, starting with denial, sliding into panic, and finally settling into silence when she realized I wasn't going to respond. She had always been good with words. This time, words failed her. Her best friend, Jenna, the one who always told me I was too serious, was the first to leave the group, not just the chat. She blocked Haley on every platform. Then came Marcus, Haley's old college friend who had once made a move on her before we were serious. He sent me a private message that read, "I didn't know, respect for how you handled it." I didn't respond, but I smiled. By midnight, 4 more friends had left the chat. 2 had changed their profile photos. Haley's curated image was cracking in real time. The next morning, her mother called me. She was crying before I could say a word. "I don't know what to say, Logan," she sobbed. "This isn't how we raised her. You didn't deserve this." I thanked her, told her I appreciated the call, and reassured her this wasn't about vengeance. It was about clarity, about ending the gaslight. That afternoon, her dad sent a single text. "I'm sorry, son. I hope you find someone worthy of the loyalty you gave her." I saved the message, not for proof, for peace. Meanwhile, Haley had gone dark on social media. Her once steady stream of brunch photos, gym selfies, and motivational quotes vanished overnight. She deactivated her Instagram and locked her Facebook. A week ago she had a following. Now she had a folder of digital wreckage trailing behind her, and not a single like in sight. She tried once more to call. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. She built a lie. I showed the truth. And in the end, she was the one who couldn't live with the spotlight. By the 3rd day, the silence had turned on Haley. The texts stopped. The calls disappeared. Not just mine, everyone's. Her world, once busy and curated, was suddenly empty. Her social circle didn't collapse with an explosion. It withered with quiet exits. A couple of unfollows here, a few blocked numbers there. Friends who once commented fire emojis on her vacation selfies now scrolled past her existence like it never mattered. Even the coworker she'd once called her ride or die had removed her from a shared project in their work app. That's what truth does. It doesn't scream, it erodes. I wasn't gloating. This wasn't about humiliation. It was about consequence. The kind you don't see coming until it's already settled into your life like mold behind wallpaper. Haley tried to pivot. I heard from a mutual acquaintance, someone who hadn't chosen a side, just quietly watched, that she was telling people it was an emotionally confusing time and that Logan took it too far. The classic reframe. She wanted to be the misunderstood one, the overpunished, but it didn't land. Because no one could unsee the receipts? You can't tell people you just slipped when there's a year-long digital record of you building a second life behind their back. So she stopped talking, completely. By the end of the week, Haley had moved out of the apartment. I came home from work one evening and found her keys on the counter in an envelope labeled "Sorry." Not even handwritten. Typed. That told me everything I needed to know. She didn't want to face me. She didn't want to say goodbye, because she knew I wouldn't yell, I wouldn't plead, I wouldn't cry. And that kind of silence? That's the kind that lingers. I spent the next few days reclaiming space. I took down the framed photo of us from Barcelona and replaced it with a skyline print. Her half of the closet? Emptied. I donated what she left behind. No fire, no drama, just removal. Clean and quiet. One night, while cleaning out an old drawer, I found a note she'd written me years ago. It was from our second anniversary. She'd written, "You make me feel safe, seen and sane. You're the only place I ever want to be." I read it once, then folded it neatly and slid it into the shredder. I don't keep souvenirs of fiction. Meanwhile, word kept spreading. People I hadn't spoken to in months messaged me, some with shock, some with support, most with a single shared sentiment: you did the right thing. Not because I exposed her, but because I never let her rewrite the story. And the truth? The truth is, Haley didn't fall. She jumped. She leapt from something steady into something secret, thinking no one would ever trace the arc. But I was watching the whole time. And now, she's the only one left pretending it didn't hurt. It's been 6 weeks since Haley walked out of my life. She thought the damage would fade, that people would forget, conversations would shift, and eventually she could recast herself in a new light. But there's something about the truth. It leaves a scar. And scars, while they may fade, never disappear. Her social media never fully returned. The once constant uploads and stories stopped like a faucet turned off at the source. She tried once to post a vague quote, something like, "People only see the part of you they want to destroy," but the comment section turned against her faster than she expected. No one was buying it. She deleted the post within the hour. Meanwhile, I was moving on, not in revenge, but in recovery. I went back to my routine, morning runs, long drives, reconnecting with friends I'd unintentionally drifted from while I was too busy being loyal to someone who wasn't. One of them, Dan, an old college roommate, invited me to a guys' trip I'd turned down every year because Haley didn't like the idea of unsupervised weekends. I booked my flight before I finished the sentence, and for the first time in a long time, I slept through the night. No anxiety, no wondering where she was, no more questioning my own instincts. Peace has a silence too, but it's a different kind. It's warm, heavy, healing. Her parents reached out one last time. Her mom sent a message thanking me again for not going further than I did, and her father told me, "You handled it like a man. Don't let this turn you bitter." I promised him I wouldn't. I didn't go through all that to become someone cold. I went through it to become someone clear. Then, last week, something strange happened. I got a notification. A new number had texted me. No name, just a message. I know I don't deserve it, but can we talk? Just once? I need closure. I stared at the screen for a moment. My first thought wasn't anger, it was indifference. She'd had closure the second she saw the truth land in front of everyone she once fooled. She got closure when the people she cared about stopped answering her, when silence filled every room she walked into, when charm stopped working. I didn't reply. Some stories deserve an ending, others deserve to stay closed. The next morning I blocked the number, not out of spite, but because I was done giving her space in my mind. Later that week, I heard from Jenna, her ex-best friend. She said Haley had started asking people if I was seeing someone new, not out of jealousy, out of curiosity. She said Haley just wanted to know if he's okay. I'm more than okay. She, on the other hand, she's still scrolling through old messages, looking for a version of me that still replies. But that man's gone, and all that's left now is the truth.